High above the swirling clouds of the galactic core stood the spire of consensus. It was not built of stone or metal. It was grown. Crystal towers rose like frozen lightning from a black asteroid the size of a small moon. Inside the largest chamber, thousands of Eldari observers floated in perfect silence. Their bodies were tall and thin, made of clear crystal that glowed softly with inner light. Each one lived for tens of thousands of years. They moved slowly, they spoke rarely. They believed time belonged to them alone. For 2 million years, the Eldari Concord had ruled the known galaxy, not with armies or fear, but with quiet certainty. Younger species came and went like summer insects. Some learned to travel between stars. Most destroyed themselves before they could leave their homeworlds. The Concord watched them all. They judged. They decided. And when the judgment was final, they acted, or more often, did nothing at all. On this cycle, a new signal reached the spire. It came from a small yellow star near the edge of the Orion Arm. The signal was crude. It used old compression methods and carried images of metal boxes lifting from a blue planet. The observers turned their attention toward it. A single thought passed among them like a slow wave. Another young race. 3 survey drones were sent. They were small, dark, and silent. No lights, no engines that could be seen. They crossed the light years in months, folding space in ways the young species could not yet imagine. When they arrived at the system called Sol, they spread out. One orbited the 3rd planet. One hid behind the gas giant. One drifted in the outer dark, watching everything. The planet was beautiful from a distance. Blue oceans covered most of it. White clouds moved in slow patterns. Green landmasses broke the blue like scattered jewels. But the drones looked closer. They saw cities that burned fuel and filled the air with black smoke. They saw machines that tore open the ground and left deep scars. They saw weapons that could crack cities in seconds. They saw oceans full of plastic and dead fish floating on the surface. They saw forests cut down until only stumps remained. And everywhere, the short-lived creatures called humans argued, fought, and died over small patches of land. One drone entered low orbit and listened to their voices. It heard languages it did not know, but the meaning came through translation matrices. They spoke of gods who lived in the sky. They spoke of borders drawn on maps. They spoke of revenge for things that happened long before any of them were born. They built bombs that could end their whole world. Then they built better bombs, just in case the first ones were not enough. The drones stayed for 3 local years. They recorded everything. Wars, peace talks that failed. Plagues that spread because people refused simple rules. Floods made worse by chopped forests. Heat that rose year after year because they burned old carbon buried in the ground. And still they kept building. Still they kept launching small ships into orbit. Still they dreamed of stars. When the drones returned, they brought petabytes of data. The spire of consensus opened its deepest archive chamber. All observers gathered. The light inside their bodies dimmed as they linked minds. The data flowed like a river of light. They saw the first human cities rise from mud. They saw stone tools become bronze, then iron, then steel. They saw ships cross oceans. They saw machines that breathed fire. They saw cities grow until lights could be seen from space. They saw the moment humans split the atom. They saw the moment humans touched the moon with metal feet. And they saw every mistake repeated in new ways. One observer, called Vor, spoke first. Its voice was calm and deep, like wind through crystal caves. This species is loud. It burns fast. It breaks what it touches. Another, older and brighter, named Learketh, answered. They reach for the sky while standing in their own poison. They will not last. A third, young for an Eldari, named Cyrus, added a question. Yet they persist. Their numbers grow even as their world sickens. Is this not unusual? The chamber filled with soft pulses of light. Agreement, disagreement, analysis. The data spun faster. Patterns emerged. Humans fought each other more than any other young race the Concord had watched. They killed millions over ideas, over land, over skin color, over gods. And yet they also built libraries. They wrote music. They looked at the stars and named them. They sent messages into the dark, hoping someone would answer. In the end, the patterns were clear. Short life, quick anger, self-harm on a planetary scale. No patience, no long view. Thalvor spoke again. They are a failed branch, violent children playing with fire. If we allow them to spread, they will carry that fire to other worlds. They will burn what they cannot understand. Learketh pulsed agreement. Let them stay in their cradle. Watch them. When they break their world, record it. Then seal the system. No ships leave. No signals go out. Quarantine. Cyrus remained quiet for a long moment. Then it spoke. They may surprise us. The chamber went still. No one laughed. Eldari did not laugh. But the silence carried weight. Surprise was not in their vocabulary for short-lived species. The vote came without words. Light patterns shifted. A majority formed. The verdict was written into the eternal archive. Designation, human. Sol origin. Status, irrelevant. Threat level, low but persistent. Action, quarantine. Observation only. No contact. No intervention. Expected extinction timeline, 3 to 7 centuries. The drones returned to Sol. They placed silent sentinels in wide orbits. Gravity lenses bent light around the system so no outsider could see inside without permission. Subspace dampeners blocked any strong signals from escaping. The humans would not know they were caged. They would think the stars were simply far away. Inside the spire, the observers dimmed their lights and returned to older matters. A nebula in the Perseus arm needed reshaping. A black hole needed its orbit adjusted by a fraction of a degree. A dying red giant required careful harvesting before it burst. These were the tasks of eternity. Sol became just another line in the archive, a small blue dot under watch, a species judged and forgotten. But far below, on the surface of that blue dot, something was already changing. In hidden labs, in quiet basements, in minds that refused to accept the cage they did not yet know existed. The humans kept working, not louder, not faster, just steadily. The Eldari did not notice. They had already decided. And decisions, once made, were eternal. They observed humanity depart quietly, and recognized their mistake belatedly. Decades passed in the galaxy. For the Eldari, decades were nothing. A single breath, a flicker of inner light. The spire of consensus continued its quiet work. Stars were moved. Nebulae were shaped. Ancient archives grew thicker with forgotten species. Sol remained a small, dull entry in the records. Quarantine held. Sentinels watched. Everything stayed as decided. Then, the first strange thing happened. Routine scans from the outer sentinel showed silence. Not quiet, silence. The blue planet's radio noise, once loud and constant, dropped away. Cities still glowed at night, but the signals changed. Fewer voices, fewer broadcasts, fewer angry arguments bouncing into space. The electromagnetic chatter that had marked humanity like a noisy child faded to whispers, then to nothing. An observer named Thalvor noticed it first, during a routine sweep. It paused its work on a pulsar timing adjustment and sent a query to the Sentinel array. The reply came back clean and cold. Surface transmissions, minimal. Orbital activity, reduced. No new launches detected in 7 local years. Heat signatures from major population centers, down 43%. Thalvor shared the data with the others. Lights in the spire shifted slowly. Curiosity, not alarm. They sent more drones, smaller ones this time, invisible even to each other. They slipped past the quarantine lenses and entered low orbit around Earth. What they found confused them. The great cities stood empty. Skyscrapers dark, streets clean but unused. Cars sat in rows, covered in dust, airports silent, factories cold. No smoke rose from chimneys. No lights moved on highways. Satellites still circled, but most were dead or drifting. The moon base humans had started building was abandoned halfway. Metal skeletons stood unfinished under harsh sunlight. The drones went lower. They scanned for life signs. Billions should have been there. Instead, only scattered groups remained on the surface. Small villages, isolated farms, people who chose to stay above ground and live simply. The rest, gone. Deeper scans revealed the truth. Under the crust, vast tunnel networks glowed with faint heat. Huge chambers, lit by artificial suns. Cities that never saw daylight. Arcologies buried miles down, powered by fusion hearts that burned clean and endless. Water recycled perfectly. Air filtered to purity. Food grown in endless hydroponic fields. No waste, no hunger, no sickness that could not be cured. The humans had not died. They had moved inside their own world. The drones listened. They captured fragments of speech through rock. Calm voices, no panic, no despair. One voice said, "They think we failed. Let them keep thinking." Another answered, "We don't need their sky yet. We need time." A third added, "Time is the only thing they cannot take." The observers watched the recordings in silence. These were not the loud, angry creatures from the old data. These humans spoke softly. They planned in centuries, not years. They built machines that thought faster than any brain. They rewrote their own genes so bodies lasted longer. Some chose to leave flesh behind entirely and live as patterns of light inside crystal lattices. Cyrus, the youngest observer who had once asked if humans might surprise them, pulsed brighter. They did not fight the quarantine, they used it. Learketh answered slowly. They hid, like insects before metamorphosis. Falvor remained still. Metamorphosis implies change to something greater. These are still short-lived, still violent in memory. We see no proof of wisdom. They found shipyards, hidden in mantle pockets. Vast halls, where dark hulls grew like crystals. No exhaust stacks, no visible engines. Materials unknown to the Concorde's tables. Hulls that bent light. Fields that drank gravity. Drives that pulled energy from the vacuum itself. The humans were building a fleet. Not for war, not for show, for escape. One drone managed to enter a construction chamber before it was quietly disabled. It sent its final images. Rows of sleek ships, black as space, no markings, no weapons visible. Workers moved without rush. No shouting, no flags, just steady hands and quiet purpose. The last transmission from that drone was simple text, sent in burst before shutdown. They are not preparing to fight us. They are preparing to leave us behind. The spire grew brighter for a moment, then dimmed again. The observers debated. Some said increase surveillance. Others said send a contact probe, offer limited uplift to control them. A few said destroy the underground cities before the ships could rise. But the verdict still stood. Irrelevant. Quarantine. No intervention. Falvor spoke last. If they leave into empty space. The rim is cold and thin. No resources worth taking. They will fade there. Our mistake would be wasting effort on ghosts. The others agreed. The matter was filed again. Anomalous resilience. Continued observation. No change to policy. Years became decades. The surface grew greener. Forests returned in places humans had once cut bare. Animals multiplied without fear. The few humans who stayed above lived lightly, leaving almost no trace. Below, the work continued. In hidden data vaults, humans studied the Eldari. Not with hate, with patience. They cracked old Concord transmissions that had leaked over centuries. They learned the shape of the galaxy's rulers. They saw the blindness. One human, a woman named Mara Voss, who had lived 4 extended lifetimes already, stood in a vast simulation chamber. Walls showed the spire of consensus in perfect detail. She watched crystal beings move in slow grace. "They think time is theirs," she said to the empty air. "They think we are mayflies." A voice from the system answered her. Calm, male, synthetic but warm. "Then we become something older than mayflies. We become the night they fear to look into." Mara smiled. "When we go quietly. No speeches, no demands, just gone." The voice replied, "And when they notice, it will already be too late." More ships finished, more minds uploaded, more bodies cloned or discarded. Trillions now lived in the deep shelters, not crowded, not desperate, patient. The surface monitors watched the sky. The sentinels watched the surface. The Eldari watched the sentinels. None of them saw the change coming, because the change did not roar. It waited. And when the moment arrived, humanity did not break the cage. They simply stepped through it, like shadows slipping under a closed door. One ordinary night in the Sol system, the change began without warning. No alarms sounded. No bright flashes lit the sky. No voices shouted across the void. The dark ships simply rose. From trenches hidden under the Pacific seafloor, from caverns carved into the Antarctic ice, from vast hangars buried beneath the Himalayas, from lunar lava tubes sealed for decades, from asteroid hollows drifting in the outer belt, millions of sleek black shapes lifted away from their cradles. They moved like oil on water, smooth, silent. No roar of engines, no trails of fire, just quiet motion. The hulls drank light. They bent gravity around themselves until sensors saw only empty space where ships should be. Drives pulled power straight from the quantum foam, energy the Eldari had dreamed of in equations but never built. Fields wrapped each vessel so tightly that even heat could not escape. Infrared scopes saw nothing. Radio ears heard only the background hum of the cosmos. The quarantine sentinels floated in their high orbits. They scanned in every direction. Nothing registered. A few tiny gravity ripples passed through their nets, but the system called them noise. Cosmic dust. Passing neutrinos. The sentinels kept watching the empty surface cities and the quiet blue planet below. They did not look up. Inside the lead ship, a long, needle-thin craft named Horizon's End, Captain Mara Voss stood on the bridge. She had lived 5 human lifetimes now, thanks to careful gene work and neural backups. Her skin looked 30. Her eyes held centuries. Around her, the crew worked without words. Hands moved over light panels. Minds linked through implants shared every thought needed. No orders barked. No tension. Just calm flow. Mara looked at the main display. It showed Earth shrinking behind them, blue and fragile. Home for so long. Now, just one more dot in the black. A soft voice came from the ship's core. All vessels report clear of quarantine perimeter. No pursuit vectors detected. Jump fields charging. Mara nodded once. Then we go. No countdown. No dramatic speech. The fleet simply folded space. One moment the ships hung above the ecliptic. The next, they were gone. Light bent. Stars twisted for a heartbeat. Then nothing. The Sol system looked exactly as it had the day before. Empty surface. Silent sentinels. A cold rock circling a quiet star. Weeks passed on Earth time. The sentinels sent their usual data packets back to the spire. Surface unchanged. Subsurface heat still present but steady. No launches. No signals. Routine. Then one packet arrived with a small note flagged yellow. Minor anomaly. Total electromagnetic output from Sol, 0. Not reduced, 0. not even background thermal noise from cities or machines. The fusion hearts deep underground had gone cold, or hidden so perfectly that nothing leaked. Thalvor received the packet first. It paused its work on a neutron star merger simulation. The light in its body flickered. It opened the attached scans. Planetary albedo normal. Atmospheric composition normal. But no industry, no radio, no infrared bloom from billions of warm bodies. The planet looked like a garden world untouched by sapient hands. Thalvor shared the data. The spire brightened slowly. Questions formed in slow pulses. Where is the population? Scans show no mass migration to orbit. Underground chambers now read as empty voids, temperature uniform with surrounding rock. Learketh pulsed darker. They cannot vanish. Matter does not disappear. Cyrus answered. They can leave. The chamber went still. The idea hung there. Impossible. Young races did not slip past Concord quarantine. Not without traces. Not without asking permission first. More drones launched. Fast ones this time. They crossed to Sol in days. They swept the system from Kuiper Belt to Mercury orbit. They found abandoned shipyards, empty hangars, cold rails where hulls once grew, scorch marks from test burns, old, faded, nothing fresh. They found data slates left behind on purpose, simple metal plates etched with words in every major human language, and in standard galactic script the humans had quietly learned from leaked Concord signals. One said, "We waited until you looked away." Another, "Thank you for the time alone." A third, the shortest, "Goodbye." The drones searched farther. They traced faint gravity echoes toward the galactic rim. Thin trails. Almost nothing. Like footprints in dust, swept by wind. The trails led outward, toward the dark gaps between spiral arms, toward places the Concorde had marked as barren. No stars worth settling. No resources worth mining. Wasted space. The observers gathered again. The spire's light turned cold blue. Thalvor spoke. They did not fight the cage. They walked through it. Learketh answered. How? Our dampeners block subspace. Our lenses hide the system. No ship can leave without signature. Cirrus pulsed once. They built something we did not predict. Drives that do not push. Fields that do not radiate. Engines that eat silence. A long pause followed. The Eldari were not used to silence inside their own minds. Then the first fear appeared. Small, sharp, new. If they can leave unnoticed, Cirrus said, what else can they do unnoticed? No one answered right away. Scouts went farther. They followed the faint trails. Light years out, the echoes grew thinner, then vanished completely, as if the ships had stepped sideways into a place sensors could not reach. Back in the spire, the archive updated itself. Status changed from quarantine active to quarantine breached. Population unknown. Location unknown. Intent unknown. The word unknown appeared 4 times in a single line. It had never happened before. Not in 2 million years. Thalvor stared at the entry. We judged them irrelevant, it said. We gave them time. They used it. Learketh dimmed. We must send envoys. Find them. Explain the error. Offer place among us. Cyrus pulsed negative. They do not want our place. They made their own. The spire dimmed further. For the first time in memory, the eternal light flickered like a candle in wind. Out on the rim, in the cold dark between stars, the human fleet drifted, not fleeing, not hiding, simply moving. Ships linked in loose chains, minds shared across light minutes. Children born in zero gravity laughed in new languages. Old ones rested in crystal sleep, dreaming of futures. Mara Voss stood on an observation deck. Stars stretched thin ahead. The galaxy's bright arms fell behind like a discarded coat. A crew member joined her, young, eyes wide. Do you think they'll notice soon? Mara smiled faintly. They'll notice when they want to. Until then, we stay quiet. She looked back one last time at the fading yellow point of Sol. We were never theirs to keep. The ship slipped forward. No sound, no light, just motion into the dark. And the galaxy behind them kept turning, unaware. Centuries slipped by like sand through open fingers. For the Eldari, centuries carried no weight. They repaired dying stars. They moved black holes a fraction of a degree to keep orbits clean. They watched young species rise and fall in the core worlds. Sol stayed quiet in the archive. A forgotten footnote. Quarantine breached but no threat detected. The humans had vanished into the rim. Barren space. Empty voids. Places not worth the energy to search. Then the rim began to change. It started small. A red dwarf star in the Perseus arm lost its natural flare cycle. Scans showed perfect stability. Solar output tuned like a machine. Around it hung a faint shell of material. Not a Dyson swarm of the old kind. Something newer. Panels so thin they looked like smoke. They caught every photon and sent the energy inward without waste. No heat leaked, no light scattered. The star dimmed slowly from the outside view. Inside, something drank deeply. The Concorde sent a scout ship. Small crew, careful sensors. When it arrived, the shell had grown. The panels moved like living skin. They formed perfect hexagons. Between them, faint blue lines pulsed. The scout tried to approach. A soft field pushed it back. Not hard, polite. Like a hand on a shoulder, saying no closer. The crew sent probes. The probes vanished into the lattice. Minutes later they returned. Each carried a single data crystal. No damage, no message, just the crystal. When the crew linked to it, they saw maps. Perfect maps of the entire shell. Energy flowcharts. Equations for zero-loss conversion. And one line of text in standard script. We fixed your star. You're welcome. The scout returned fast. The spire opened its deepest chamber. The crystal went into the center. Light from thousands of observers bathed it. They read. They calculated. They found no errors. The humans had improved the star the Eldari had marked for slow decline. They had done it without asking, without announcement, without leaving a trace of their tools. More reports came. A white dwarf in the scutum arm had been wrapped in a gentle gravity net. Its rotation slowed. Its mass loss stopped. It would live another billion years instead of collapsing soon. Again, no debris, no radiation spikes, just quiet work. A pair of binary pulsars had their orbits adjusted. The gravitational waves they sent out now carried encoded data. When decoded, the waves repeated a simple pattern. Prime numbers in sequence, then a pause, then the atomic numbers of elements humans once thought rare. A hello from far away. No demand, no threat, just proof they were there. Then came the nebulae. In the Cygnus Rift, a vast cloud of gas and dust began to fold. Tendrils twisted into geometric shapes. Spheres inside spheres. Lattices that caught starlight and turned it into tight beams. The beams shot outward, in perfect lines. They linked distant systems like threads in a web. Energy moved along them, with no loss. The Concorde measured the efficiency. 100%. Impossible by their old laws. Yet it happened. Scout fleets went out in greater numbers. They found more. Abandoned stations drifted near dead stars. Simple structures. No weapons. No defenses. Just monitors. Each station held a plaque in clear view. One read, "We watched you watch us. Now we watch everything." Another, "Your eternity is loud. Ours is quiet." A third, the most direct, "You called us irrelevant. We agree. You are now free to remain so. The observers felt something new. Not anger, not fear exactly, a cold pressure in their crystal cores. They had ruled by being the oldest, the wisest, the ones who saw farthest. Now something older in experience moved beyond their sight. They sent a diplomatic envoy, a single large ship, white crystal, lights of peace. It traveled to the last known human echo, a globular cluster at the far rim. The cluster had changed. Stars inside moved, not in wild orbits, in careful patterns. They formed a giant sphere, a lattice of suns. Light bent between them. Energy flowed in rivers of plasma. At the center hung a dark core. Not a black hole, something else. A computational matrix. Stars as processors. Gravity as circuits. The whole cluster thought. The envoy ship approached slowly. It sent greetings in every known language. It offered dialogue. It promised no quarantine, no judgment. A response came, not from a ship, not from a voice, from the lattice itself. A beam of coherent light touched the envoy. Gentle, it carried data. The data showed simulations, billions of them, running at once. One simulation rebuilt the entire history of the Eldari Concord. Every meeting, every verdict, every quiet decision to ignore or contain. The details were perfect. Even private thoughts of long-dead observers appeared, pulled from leaked subspace echoes over centuries. Another simulation showed Earth before the quiet departure, then after, then the Exodus, then the Rim, then farther. Places the Concord had never mapped, galaxies beyond the local group, humans there too, building, changing, growing. The final simulation showed the Concord itself, present day, the spire. The observers gathered now, watching the data arrive, feeling the cold pressure grow. A voice came with the light, calm, human, without hate. You spent 2 million years deciding who belongs. We spent a few centuries deciding we do not need to belong to your rules. We left your galaxy to you. Keep it, shape it, break it. We have moved past the need for your permission. The envoy ship sat still. No attack came. No trap closed. The lattice simply ignored them after that. Stars continued their slow dance. The thinking cluster kept thinking. Back in the spire, the light dimmed to almost nothing. For the first time in 2 million years, the eternal hum stopped. Silence filled the crystal halls. Thalvor pulsed weakly. They did not destroy us, he said. Lirketh answered slower than ever. They outgrew us. Cyrus remained bright for a moment. They could have ended us. They chose not to. The archive updated again. Status unknown changed to status transcendent. Threat level, none. Because threat requires intent. Humanity had none. Not toward the Eldari, not toward anyone. They had simply left the game the Eldari thought was the only one. The observers stared at the dark between stars. Somewhere out there, in places too far to reach, humans built new rules, new galaxies, new ways of being. Without pride, without the need to prove anything. And in that quiet departure, they left the sharpest lesson of all. The galaxy's rulers had never been the oldest. They had only been the slowest to learn. The spire of consensus had never known true darkness. For 2 million years its crystal walls glowed with steady inner light. Observers moved in slow patterns. Thoughts flowed like calm rivers. Decisions lasted forever, because time itself seemed to bend around them. Now the light flickered. Not from damage, not from attack, from something deeper. Doubt. Reports kept arriving from the rim, each one shorter, each one colder. A cluster of young blue stars had been rearranged into a perfect spiral. Energy output rose without fuel. No radiation, no waste. just clean power feeding structures no Eldari eye had ever seen. Another report. A rogue planet once drifting cold and dead now orbited a new sun built from gathered dust. On its surface, cities of light grew without touching the ground, floating, silent, perfect. The observers gathered more often, their pulses slowed, their bodies dimmed. They replayed old data, the first signals from Earth, the wars, the pollution, the short, angry lives. They had called it failure. They had called it irrelevance. Now those same images looked different. Not broken, patient, waiting. A final probe returned from the farthest edge. It had traveled farther than any Concorde vessel before. It came back empty of crew. Only its core remained. Inside the core sat one small object, a black cube, no larger than a human fist. No markings, no power signature. When the spire linked to it, the cube woke. Light poured out, not harsh, soft, warm even. It filled the chamber like morning on a forgotten world. Then a voice spoke. Human, calm, without anger or pride. A single voice that carried the weight of trillions. You watched us for a moment and decided we were nothing. We watched you for centuries and decided you were quaint. We leave you your galaxy. Play in it as long as it lasts. We have others to build. The voice stopped. The light faded. The cube went dark again. It floated in the center of the spire like a small moon. No one touched it. No one needed to. The words stayed in every mind. Thalvor pulsed once, weakly. They do not hate us. Learketh answered slower than ever before. They do not need to. Cirrus remained bright for a long moment. They could have ended everything we are. They chose silence instead. The chamber filled with quiet pulses, not debate, not planning, just the slow acceptance of truth. Humanity had not left because they feared the Eldari. They left because the Eldari no longer mattered. The galaxy the Concorde ruled had become a small pond. Humans had swum to oceans beyond. More probes went out. They found no armies, no fleets waiting to strike. Only echoes, empty stations with final messages carved into metal. One read, "We were never yours to judge." Another, "Your rules were small. We outgrew them." A third simply said, "Look up." The observers did look up. Through the crystal dome of the spire, they saw the stars. The same stars they had moved and shaped for ages. Now those stars felt distant, smaller, as if the galaxy itself had shrunk while they were not watching. They searched the archives, every verdict, every quarantine, every ignored species. They looked for patterns. They found one. Always the same mistake. They judged by speed, by noise, by how loudly a species claimed the stars. Humans had claimed nothing. They had simply taken what they needed and moved on, quietly, completely. Thalvor spoke again, its light almost gone. We thought eternity was ours alone. We thought patience belonged to the old. They showed us patience is not waiting to die. It is waiting to become. No one answered right away. The silence stretched. For the first time the spire felt empty. Because meaning had left. Outside, the galaxy kept turning. Stars burned. Worlds spun. Young species dreamed of space. Some would rise. Some would fall. The Concorde would watch them all, judge them all, quarantine them all, the same way they always had. But now they knew. Somewhere beyond the rim, in dark spaces between galaxies, humanity built, not with noise, not with war, with quiet hands and endless time. Minds linked across voids. Children grew under alien suns. Stories were told of a small blue world, of watchers who never understood. of a departure so soft it felt like waking from a dream. Mara Voss, now many lifetimes beyond her first body, stood on a balcony of living crystal. Below her stretched a city that covered a moon. Above her hung a new galaxy taking shape. Stars born from gathered gas, planets shaped by thought. No borders, no flags, just endless room. She looked back toward the faint glow that had once been home. The Milky Way looked small now, a bright spiral in the dark. She smiled without bitterness. "They will keep watching," she said to the empty air. A voice answered from the city below. Warm, many voices together. "Let them watch. We are already gone." She nodded once, and turned away from the old light. In the spire, the last pulse faded. The crystal walls went dark for the first time in 2 million years. Not broken, not dead, just quiet. The observers sat in that darkness. They felt something new. Not fear, not regret, exactly. Recognition. They had mistaken silence for weakness. They had mistaken patience for defeat. They had mistaken restraint for surrender. Humanity had not raged against the galaxy. They had not demanded a place at the table. They had simply stepped past the table, past the room, past the house, into places no one else could follow. And in doing so quietly, they left the sharpest truth behind. The true masters of the cosmos had never needed to shout. They only needed to leave. The galaxy belonged to the Eldari now. Truly, completely. They could keep it. Forever. In the dark of the spire, one small light returned. Cyrus, faint, alone. It pulsed once, softly, like a question no one would ever answer.